Well, welcome to this episode of Did She Really Say That? And the answer is going to shock, surprise, and even inspire you as female entrepreneurs, as women in business, and as those that are shifting the conversation, even in the corporate space. This conversation is not limited to just one business structure, it's humanity. That's really where we're coming at this today. So I'm super excited for our special guest here with us, Isabelle. Say your last name.
Tierney.
So, Isabelle Tierney is MA. She's a licensed therapist and founder of the Stress Reset. And I know our conversation when we had our meet and greet was fantastic around this. It's a proven method that helps individuals and businesses reduce stress in minutes. Yes. Could you imagine being able to flip the switch and turn off your stress in just the blink of an eye? So, anytime and anywhere. As a renowned and international speaker and authority on stress and resilience, her work has transformed thousands of lives and continues to transform their lives, unlocking greater well being, productivity, and health. She is passionate about making stress relief simple, fast, and accessible so people can thrive in any area of their life. Ladies, you know this. You have children, you know you need a stress relief in minutes, right? You're dealing with your spouse, you need a stress relief in minutes. You're dealing with work, you're dealing with all of that. And being able to regulate and even reduce your stress is such a big piece. She's the mother of three amazing children and lives in Montana, where her two grandchildren also reside. So, Isabelle, thank you so much for joining us here on this episode. I am so looking forward to our conversation here.
Well, I always love it. It's a very rare thing when people read the bio and actually stop and actually feel and actually comment. Usually it's kind of like this mechanical thing, like she is a licensed therapist. And I'm like, that was so great. Like,
What brought you into this practice, this business of how to reduce stress? Like, what
mm.
inspired that?
Oh, I had no stress whatsoever. So I just, no, I'm joking.
Oh, you're one of those God-given, talented,
I hate those
miraculous
people.
people.
No, no, I don't really. I admire those people. So I grew up in Switzerland in a childhood that was filled with abuse, all kinds of abuse. And
Mm.
so, of course, right, I learned my nervous system got dysregulated very young, continued to be dysregulated. By the time I moved to the States when I was 14, I went to an all-girl boarding school and promptly developed an eating disorder because lots of other people were, we were all starving ourselves and then binging and, all kinds of things. So, um, I'm really smart. And I think I'm like a lot of women where on the outside, I looked very put together. This was a very high-end boarding school. I then went to Tufts undergrad. I have two master's degree, had the husband, the three kids. But meanwhile, right behind the scenes, I have the eating disorder going on, anxiety, depression, but all so beautifully hidden by the mask of having it all. And
Oof.
moved to
Hold
board.
on. I'm going to stop because I think every woman in here just either got an opportunity to sigh and go, holy crap, it's not just me. And also the ability to relate to you.
And how much energy it costs us to have a mask on. I
It's
don't think we
exhausting.
women, like we're not meant to be isolated, right? Like we work with oxytocin, we work with the hormone of connection is how stress is released fastest for women. So when I'm putting on a mask and I'm not even showing you, that I am anxious and that I just binged last night and I feel horrible, it was just it's just not I like to connect. I like to be transparent. So this was not my preference, let's say it that way. And then in 2003, so I went to energy healing school, which was really cool. I had a spiritual awakening after reading the book The Celestine Prophecy when my
Mm.
second daughter was born, and just like the whole world changed. I had had no spirituality before. So then I went for 4 years to an energy healing school that was incredible because the head of the school always said the client can only go as far as the healer has gone. And
Mm.
so
True.
if doing our personal work was just as important as learning hands-on healing and energy, like past life regressions. And then I moved to Colorado and I then built a private practice working with eating disorders and other, cutting all kinds of difficult diagnoses. And I burnt out because I was seeing
Mm.
8 clients a day, 5 days a week, raising 3 kids, husband, there was no room for him whatsoever. So two things happened. I burnt out and I was diagnosed with adrenal exhaustion. I think a lot of women are getting diagnosed with that, right? These days.
Hearing it more and more. Yes.
Right. Well, it took forever for them to diagnose it. My traditional doctor kept going, "You're fine." I'm like, "I can't even get out of bed in the morning." Like, it wasn't until I did alternative, like I did that saliva test. And I remember my brother, who's a psychiatrist, was like, "Those are your cortisol levels. I can't believe you even are walking around." Right. Like my
Mm.
cortisol was gone. And the other thing that happened is I went through a divorce because, of course, I know there were other factors too, but my burnout gave, I had no capacity
No
to.
room. Yeah.
So, so
Oh.
I had to change my life, right? And I think you and I talked about this, and it's always good to bring it up. So often, especially as women, we wait till crisis to actually
Mm-hmm.
get help. And it's why I'm so passionate about these kinds of podcasts, because it's like, ladies, if I can tell you, you don't have to wait until you have a crisis of disease or divorce or addiction or whatever it is to figure out there's a different way to live. Well, that's what I'm here for. And so I brought together, I really resolved to find a better way as a woman to be able to have the success I wanted and the impact I wanted without burning out. And it's exactly what you talk about. Like they were only male models out there. They were adrenaline driven models.
Junkies.
And I was good at it. I was such a good adrenaline person, except I didn't understand that long term it was burning me out and was not the way. I think we can do it when we're young as women, we can push. And then at a certain point, we hit the wall. Thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. And because it's our body's way of just showing us like this isn't us, this isn't who we are. And I think it's interesting when you talk about the adrenal burnout from that. A lot of times I think as women, because we're mirroring so much in the corporate space of what a business looks like, we're not even in our bodies anymore. It's like nobody wants to be known for their boobs and ass, right? So we hide it. We don't want to be female because then it's gonna be the hindrance of our promotion. So we do so many stupid things because we get shamed and blamed by being a female in so many different environments, which leads to like what things you're talking about, the eating disorders, the cutting, the all these things that we do to ourselves. And I'm just getting chills over here talking about this because it's such a real topic, right? It is such a element of what we go through as women. So I just want to say first off, I love the work because I think as women, we need somebody that can say, "Hey, your body's reacting differently." So let's talk about the difference between stress between men and women. How
Yeah.
long does it sit in the body? Because this was shocking when you told me. I about fell out of my chair, so thank you for that.
Well, and I really just want to say this is from a book and then from my own professional experience. So this
Okay.
is, please check it out for yourself, the facts of that. Really, there's some things I know really well. This is one of
Yes.
those that what I have discovered is that men, it takes them longer. That's one thing. It takes them longer. Once they get overwhelmed, it takes them longer to unwind, which was interesting because it's sort of really touching me to realize that when I poked at Brian, if he was already stressed out, if I poked at him, like it actually took him a long time to unwind. It's actually very painful to the male
Mm.
body. So we women, we can connect and come back and de-stress pretty easily. So that's one thing. And then the other one is what we spoke about before. Men the best way for them to heal their stress is to kind of go off and hunt. If you think about caveman time, we women, we need connection. And
Mm.
so it's a big difference. Like when I'm stressed out, I want to talk to Brian. Brian wants to go into his cave. And so it's taken us a long time to figure out like how do we solve that. But
There's this kind of thought process that they are able to walk out of it. The next day they wake up and they forget about it. And as women, we tend to hold on to things or remember things or mull over things in our minds. So there's the sense that even the men are still dealing with it. And, I think they're not allowed to show it. They're not allowed to, they may not even have the verbal capacity to be able to express it. And so just understanding as men and women our ability to de-stress and how that shows up for us, I think is a really important concept for us to learn and to start recognizing in ourselves.
yeah, because it softened my heart when I found out.
Mm.
And then I want to bring up another piece you said about corporate. I think that it's really, I don't like when we put fault on anything or anyone, right? We've all played a role. And so when I think about women, whether it's entrepreneur, which is what I am, or corporate, I think we haven't known how to be. And so
Mm.
the exact pattern that I described about myself, I first started using adrenaline, right, which ate away at me, but I didn't care like I would. And then eventually I burnt out, and then I had to find a different way, which is your whole work. I think this is the same thing in the corporate world. We haven't known how to be women, so we've adopted the stance of men, and then we're pissed off because but then we've adopted the other side of women, which is quiet, passive woman. We haven't known how to find our true power as women, and that's one of the reasons I feel so grateful to be on this podcast because of this is what you teach.
Yeah, it's the essence of us. I mean, as you're listening to women that are designing businesses that are changing the model of business, working evenings only because that's when they feel most alive and awake. If they're not the 9 to 5, they're maybe the, 3 to 9 or something like that. It's completely different, and how they're reshaping it is actually still allowing them to create the life they love, take care of their kids in the morning, and do what they need to do for those that are parents. But I think it's that balance, or it's that weaving of it, or it's understanding yourself. And I think, you talked about going in and doing the healing work, right? You're like, I went and, yes, 3 years, you said you were.
Oh,
4 years. So talk about that journey for you. What was that like?
well, I mean, again, you have to understand. So I did not have a bone, a spiritual bone, right? Like nothing. And like my poor husband would talk about like the Tao and I'd be like, what is he talking about? I remember always my sister who's in Switzerland became an astrologer and I used to make fun of her, like the snarky, like, and then I read that book. And then for 2 years, I had what's called a spiritual conversion. Like I did not read one fiction book. It was like a gate opened up with the world finally made sense to me for the
Mm.
first time after reading the Celestine prophecy. And so in 96, I went to do this energy healing workshop. And I just still remember, I remember it was like, they made you do hands-on healing. And I had my head down and one of the teacher passes by and she goes, your crown chakra is emitting purple energy. Put your head up. And I'm like, what is she talking about? I had no clue. And so entering was a big deal because, I was a master's degree, from BU and Tufts University, international relations, and this was suddenly like talking about past life regressions. Again, the whole sophomore year was the year of the shadow. Like I'm talking like that's how deep we went into our
Mm.
own healing. It was just so the whole 4 years I completely transformed and actually lost a lot of friends that knew me as Isabelle from before. And then suddenly I was expansive and wanted to talk about spirit and energy and all those things. And then, I opened up a practice for 3 years in energy healing in Boston, and then I moved to Colorado. And I have some of the craziest stories of, people being able to have children because of hands-on healing, being like just people, just some incredible stories, like incredible stories. All
Well,
fire
and
alarms going off in the middle of healings, all kinds of things.
I think what's interesting is you're talking about this, you've done this spiritual healing back in 1996. We're in 2025 now, and definitely would say I see more of this conversation happening now than back then. So I can see why there's probably some resistance from your friends because it feels like it's a much more open conversation. Would you agree, or would you say
Well,
that it's just
I'll
been
tell you, I'll share
evolving?
a secret.
Oh, I got
I
secrets
was,
now.
so when I moved to Colorado and I became licensed as a marriage and family therapist, I really started walking away from the identification as an energy healer, right? And I became
Mm.
known in Boulder. I was a well-known therapist. And I always use my skills. Like I can still in front of a client say, wait, what's happening here? Or I picked something up from 10 years ago, like something about, so I can still do that, but I stopped doing energy healings. I hid from myself.
Mm.
So a few weeks ago, I was watching a Joe Dispenza movie, and at the end of his workshops, he does this thing called a coherence healing. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's what I was taught to do at my healing school. And that, and then a couple other things occurred. And it felt like, you know how they call it a soul retrieval? I feel like literally it's only in the last few weeks that I have re-owned that I'm actually incredibly skilled with chakras, with energy. So it's fascinating that you bring that up because I don't even know if 2, 3 months ago I would have
Mm.
said much about healing school. So I think that we are needing on this planet more expansive tools than just our psychological or scientific tools. I think we are needing a wider array toolbox. And I've got it. I've got the science ones, I've got the psychological one and the spiritual one. And it's time that I own it, right?
Yes, please, because it's coming out of you like overflowing. And this, for those that are watching this video, you can see she's lit up. That's the thing, though. When you fully embody everything of who you are, and you're not putting one piece in the corner or saying, I can't be this, I can't be that, you show up lit up, and that attracts people to you because they want to lean into the conversation. I don't know if you watched me, even over here, you guys told me I started to lean in. I got closer too. And
Interesting.
that's the power of when you start aligning who you are and you don't shy away because it's considered woo or it's considered too feminine or it's because a lot of what you're talking about spirituality tends to get um like dishonored, distoned, just kind of pushed to the side. And I think that's the essence of also embodying being a woman is that we bring all that together. We're able to hold, this is the crazy part. I'm going to say this, and I know it's true because I'm getting the left side tingle over here. And for those women that you've never had a whole body like resonate in like an awakening, but Isabel is embodying three elements of power and grace, and she's holding the space for them. And that's who you get to be as you bring your work forward,
Mm.
right? That's the embodiment of being a woman that is a creator. You are creating and you hold the space, not just for one modality, but to hold the space of all modalities and create from that space. And that, when you talk about what the world needs in healing, is that allowing of yourself to fully shine through. Because you're going to bring that into every conversation. You get to bring that into working with companies and corporations if that's where you seem to go, because they are in desire of that,
Mm.
knowing or unknowing. It is the space in which you bring, and in your walking into that room, embodying that is like you alive in the world. So thank you for that.
I think you said something really important about 5 months ago, because one of my daughters was a police officer. She now works with vets. And so we decided to bring my work and check it out with first responders, right? Whose mental health right now is worse than maybe it's ever been, or we're aware of it more than it's ever been, whichever of the two it is. And so it was a few days before I was going to do an 8 hour presentation in Colorado. And I have a friend of mine who's a former cop and who went to the same healing school as I went. And I was on the phone with her and I was lamenting a little bit. Like, yes, I look so forward to doing that. But I was lamenting that I wouldn't be able to bring any of my spiritual language there.
Mm,
Um, and she just said to me, she said, it's got nothing to do with your language. It's what you're holding. And there was something that liberated me because, and I think this is a really important conversation for your community. It's like, yes, it is about owning all the parts of us, and it doesn't mean that we have to speak them up all the time, but it's also about being able to, like, I hold my my essence. I don't have to use the words because you said it. You said, did you notice how Isabel looked and felt? And you said she was lit up. Even if I hadn't said one spiritual word, that's the energy that would have been experienced. So that's been a big lesson for me, really going more deeply into B2B. I don't have to use woo language if they don't want it.
yeah. And I think that's the part that we get to understand as women is that we can actually we create the language and we know when to speak, when what to say if we just listen to our intuition in those moments. We have that true capability to feel the energy like you are an energy sensor.
Mm.
So you can read a room, and that's both the verbal and the nonverbal language. And you'll adjust based on how a body moves, leans in, leans back. You see that and you feel that, and then the words naturally come,
You know
right?
what was cool? I just presented to 18 CEOs in this called this Vistage, this huge CEO peer group. And so at the beginning, when I introduced my work, I said, well, my work can be seen through the lens of the scientific, the psychological, or the spiritual. And because the woman who ran the group said to me, yeah, they're not spiritual. What I said, you know, I'm not going to talk about the spiritual, but if you have questions about it, if you have interest about it, please go ahead and bring it into the room. And that was the first time I did that, and I really liked that.
Beautiful.
I gave
That's
them,
a beautiful.
right, telling
Yeah.
them, the cookie's there, you get to decide whether you want to take a bite of it.
You've got the safe space. You created the safe space in which the conversation could arise easily or could be laid aside to later. Maybe they could have had it with you as a one-on-one. So you gave them permission to be as authentic as they chose to be. And I think
Yeah,
that's the beauty of what you presented for them.
yeah, yeah,
Beautifully
no.
done.
Hmm.
So we talked about the stress method. So let's dive into that a little bit because we as women experience stress. It feels like every second of every day. Like you could think, oh, I'm not stressed. There's still stress that happens. So you're talking about creating a method that in a few minutes shifts something for us. How did you come
Yeah.
across that?
Well, the first image that came was this scale that I would at that point call the stress scale, and I just would use it with my private practice client, and I would say on a 1 to 10, how stressed are you? And then there was something about them naming it, and there was red, yellow, green, that just would really be sticky with them. And then I started
Mm,
having them track it. So over time, it evolved to this really beautiful formula for stress regulation. So that is awareness, right? So
hmm.
recognizing where we're at on the stress scale, and then plus action. So what do we do once we recognize we are in the stress response, or if we're in the stress response, equals self-regulation. So the thing about self-regulation and resilience, these words are thrown out a lot. What they mean are you recognizing that you're in the stress response, and then you know how to regulate yourself out of it. So that's
Okay.
really so the if you can self-regulate every day throughout your day, over time you develop the muscle of resilience. That's how those two words come
Mm.
together. So yeah, it sounds like that's maybe you hadn't heard it said this way.
I hadn't. So, but it makes me more aware, if anything else, right? In terms because I think a lot of times we are gifted the word resilience as women as you're resilient. It's a
Grit, like
fighting stance. Like it is this need to struggle or overcome struggle. Like when we hear it, like, oh, I can talk about resilience as a woman, I feel like it's this overcoming of like you've got to fight through. Like I feel like you're more stressed in being resilient.
yeah, the really definition is the capacity to recognize when you're under stress and shift out of it. Now, my
Mm.
scale, when I talk about my work, we have, so it's a 1 to 10 scale. One is you're all the way in what I call the red zone, that's the stress response. And 10, you're all the way, it's a triangle. So at the bottom, you're all the way in the green zone, which
Okay.
is when you're open and expanded and spacious and grounded and embodied and inspired and creative, like all the things we want to be. So you track yourself on this scale. And then if you are stressed, like I said, you do the 3 steps, which I'll share in a moment. But the big thing is the outcome isn't to not go into that red zone or yellow zone. Like even Joe Dispenza, he's like, people ask me all the time, do I still get stressed? He's like, yes, I just recognize it faster and I know
Yes.
how to shift out of it faster. So for those of you who listen, I'm going to double no. I don't not live with stress. It's that I literally, like, as I start going up that scale towards the red zone, I recognize the subtlest signals. Oh, my jaw is getting a little tight. Oh, my
Mm.
voice is getting a little louder. So that's one of the things I teach. When you learn the scale, the awareness part, I have a list of signals to help you identify, because the sooner
Nice.
you identify you're heading into that red zone, the sooner you can shift out of it. So that's the awareness part. And then the action part is 3 steps, think traffic light, which are stop. If I'm in the red zone, like stop. And then I say, don't believe anything I think, feel, or want to do, because in the red zone, my perception of the world and of myself is distorted.
Ooh.
So, and that actually interrupts neural pathways, the habitual neural pathways from continuing down and getting deeper. So stop, right? Red light.
Right.
Second step, slow down and breathe. That's the yellow,
Mm.
going into the yellow. So that scientifically activates your parasympathetic. It means your capacity to think comes back online, your capacity to make conscious choices comes back online. And then step number three, again, think traffic light, go. And I say go to a green zone habit. So that is a habit that's going to help you become even more regulated. But the thing that's important is when you do that habit, you are invited to really anchor it for at least a minute. So let's say I go take a walk. I really anchor how good it feels. Or if I call you and I'm in a red zone and I'm shifting out, like, oh, it feels so good to connect to you. Because when you do that, your memory bank starts retaining more positive memories. And
Mm.
so you're actually completely rewiring your brain. So every step of the three steps, stop. Neural pathways are being stopped. Slow down and breathe. You're opening choice, and then go. You're creating a new neural groove. So three steps, creating new, rewiring, and at minimum, you shift 1 point on that scale. I have people, women, after a few weeks of working with me, they change their baseline level from a 3 to an 8. They'll go up just 4 or 5 points on that scale as their
Wow.
baseline level. That's like how powerful the work is.
That is incredible. Now, I did have a question that kind of arose as you were talking. In that green zone, as you recreate the habit, can you potentially take on a bad habit?
Yeah, you know what I call them? So I don't do this in
Not
B2B.
like a habit, but like I'm trying to figure out, like you were saying, like into a green zone. So I'm like,
So what it's interesting because in B2C, this is where the words I use. So I call them feel good habits.
okay.
I call them false good habits. In B2B, I say green zone habits or red zone habits. So a false good habit, think about a false god, right? A false god promises you the moon and then ends
Mm,
up messing with you. So a
right.
false good habit might be by going to binge on ice cream, or it could be, like drinking one glass of wine too many. So it's a false good habit. A feel good habit and it temporarily brings you to the green zone, right? You temporarily feel good when you first
Yeah.
put a cookie in your mouth and then you don't. So that's a false good. A feel good is one that sustainably has you feel good. And so what I
Mm,
say is like it's all about the intention. I used to do yoga from my eating disorder place. Right? Yoga or anything that should be a soothing, relaxing thing. But if you're type A and you're a perfectionist, like, you know, and
I gotta get this pose right. Yes.
and how many calories am I burning? And did I,
Oof.
so even the same habit can be a green zone or red zone habit. So really,
Mm,
you're the only one who knows. I mean, for me, nature is one of my most powerful one. Music is one of my most powerful one. And what I teach in my course, so when people work one-on-one, is for people to develop their own toolkit of green zone habits, some of which require something like being out in nature, but many of which just require internal transformation. So, like
mm.
taking a minute to remember a really good day or really good moment I had in the last week and just letting myself shift at least 2 points just by remembering that memory. So, I'm very agile. There's a way to become very agile about those green zone habits.
And I think that's the beauty of it is the agility. What you just said was, it doesn't look the same for everybody, I'm guessing. No, she's shaking her head no. So for those listening, they don't get to see
No,
a head
some people
shake.
like stuff that I'm like, what the heck? And it's so cool. And something I'm like, wow, I wish I never thought about that. So it's cool to talk to each other about it.
Yeah. So, and I think that's the thing. I think as women, sometimes we don't share what's actually working for us in a green zone. I think that ability to collaborate and communicate. So you work one-on-one. Do you also do like any type of group where they get to kind of hear other people green zone? Yeah. So she's shaking her head yes again. So I'm asking
You're
because
right. I forget that some people will just see audio. Yes. So for my consumer branch, that's called the Feel Good Life, and I do one-on-one, and then I do a group class. It's a 12-week course that I
okay.
love, 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 love. And then the same material is taught to businesses, and I either work with leaders one-on-one or I do trainings for teams. And
Okay.
so that can be tech company, construction companies. We just started with first responders. I can do it in person. I can do 4 hour, 8 hours. There's all different. I'm working with Mind Body right now, and I did a 3 part resilience training. So it's really cool because, like, again, you can see it in the work. It's a red zone, yellow zone, green zone. Where am I at? I do 3 steps. So I have literally never encountered one person who didn't get it right away and then
Mm.
didn't start using the language right away and didn't remember. Because if we create complicated pathways to transformation, we are not going to remember when we are in the
Okay. Then I'm going to throw in a whole new like sidebar on this one too,
right.
because there are tons of people or companies out there that claim that if I just take a shake, I can reduce my stress. If I just get this one element in my body under control, I can reduce stress. But what I'm hearing from you is it really is an awareness of what's triggering that stress and then being able to, like you said, self-regulate that. And so many times I feel like we're getting pointed to drugs or something that's still outside of us. What have
Mm,
you, like, it's still an external solution instead of the internal work.
mm. Yeah, I'm going to break up into what you said. The thing that I love about this work now, remember, I'm a therapist. I spent 20 years analyzing the why. Why am
Mm.
I like that? Why am I like my mother, my father, blah, blah. This work doesn't require that. When you said I help you identify the trigger, you actually don't have to know why you got triggered into the red zone. You just have to know
Ah.
that you are and then shift out of it. Now, if every time you're with a specific person or every time you're doing a specific thing, you're like, huh, interesting, I go red zone, then you can have the curiosity and you can go to a therapist or whatever, see a coach, but you don't have to. That's what makes this world, this work
This.
as available to first responders as it does to someone who's done 30 years of self-development. Because, and so what it requires, so that's part A. And then part B, you have to become self-aware enough. So I teach physical signals, emotional, mental, and relational. So, for example, a red zone physical signal could be racing heart rate. For me, it's raised voice, tight jaw. An emotional signal could be I'm starting to feel anxious and I'm starting to fret. Mental signals, oh yeah, I'm starting to ruminate and to have really fast thoughts. And then relational, I'm really wanting to pick at my husband right now. Like I hate the way he's chewing. So you learn, you become
Mm.
so self-aware of yourself, and then what habit you're going to pick to shift out of it depends on who you're with, the situation you're in, um, how activated you are. Like if I'm in the red zone fully and you tell me to journal, you know what I'm going to tell you. You to meditate, like, mhm.
Fuck
So
off.
because
Like,
now we're
yeah.
really red zone, we have to discharge bit of that energy before we can actually do a mel or a thing. So again, that's all the stuff I teach that we can become ninjas, not only at recognizing where we're at on the scale, but also how to shift out of it as effectively as possible. And so it becomes fun. It's like a game. Like, oh, I called Susie Q and wow, that brought me down 2 points. Oh, but when I called John, it brought me down 4 points. Or when I went for a walk. So you become the one who sees what works best for you. And it becomes so empowering. So self-regulation, noticing when I'm constricting at all, right? Like the triangle. Think when you go towards the red zone, you're constricting because you're constricting to
You get
fight, flight, or
smaller.
flee,
Like
right?
the shoulders go up,
Right. Well,
the
because
ears
you have
get
to,
down.
your body needs to go like this to be ready to fight. Yeah, fight, flight, or free.
Yes.
So we become constricted. So the more you open up to the green zone, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, relationally, the more space you have, the more safe you are, the more good you feel. So it's the opposite of what we've been evolutionarily taught, which is to
Mm.
constrict and to always be on the lookout for danger. I'm inviting us to actually continually open up and self-regulate. And I think then we become human beings that are safe, that feel safe to ourselves and to
To
others. And that's
others.
how we create whatever we want to call it, heaven on earth or whatever that is.
You know, that I think if you look at 2020, it caused everyone to be afraid of ourselves. And I will just put that out there because I truly believe that we started fearing each other. And that fear, when you start getting smaller and smaller, makes you like ready to defend everything.
Yes.
So, what I love about what you just shared is that when you self regulate, when you can focus yourself, women, we always hear that we're not taking up enough space, that we're playing small. And what Isabel just gave you was the opportunity and the gift. So, work with her if it sounds like somebody you want to work with, learn how to regulate and redirect and like redefine your green space. Find out really what that is for you, what those, elements are in your life. Because I think when you start taking up space, when you sit up straighter, when you light up that way, that is you being at your full capacity of who you get to be in the world. And as an entrepreneur, that's why you got into business.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, and I want to say something to your community. Please be kind with yourselves because we are actually, I was so stunned by this, what I learned after years. I thought we not did not want to be in the red or the yellow zone. I didn't realize that we're actually really scared to be in the green zone. Actually, to live fulfilled. We all say we want it, but it's
We're terrified of it.
really scary. And so as you start looking at yourself, right? And I have a quiz that people can take so they can see where they're
Yes.
at on the scale. And then I'm happy to do a consult with them and like with what the results said and to show them like where could they make changes. But as even if you realize you're living in the red zone most of the time, you do this quiz and you realize that that's the state that your nervous system has gone habituated to, whether it's from childhood trauma, whether it's from original, like your personality, or whether it's stress of today. And you can't go from red to green. Like you've got to be kind to your nervous system and patient with your nervous system to get it comfortable to eventually become a green zone human being. And we all want to lose 10 pounds in 10 days and find the love of our life. Like nervous system work, we have to honor why we got where we got to and how to shift into the kind of human being we want to be. So be kind and patient with yourself, please, as you listen to this podcast.
All right. So just so you all know, what I'm doing as she's sharing the last thoughts is I'm actually taking her test. So before we wrap up and we get this, so the quiz is in the show notes, okay? And you guys know me, I like to be part of this conversation. So I don't want my guests just to think I'm not doing this. So I'm actually going through test. So here's the cool thing about this quiz, right?
So the quiz will help you really identify these different life areas and yeah, you might just have to work on one or you might have to work on all the life areas.
Oh,
Oh.
eek. Oh. All right, that question there stumped me. I'm gonna let you guys figure out your own because each one of them is gonna stump you. So, but yeah, so now I'm on career and finances. So I'm step 4.
Yeah, and then spirituality and faith is the last one. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I'm going there. So I'm just saying it's not taking me long to go through this because I want you guys to realize I will share exactly what comes out of this with you. I have nothing
Well, you'll
around this
have to wait
because
for an email. So hopefully either you put it in the show notes or we'll wait for the email, which should come
oh,
about 2 seconds later.
all right, hold on. Yes.
I
This one might be
hate
a
doing
more of
this
my
during the
green zone.
podcast. Talk about
Yes.
it, engagement,
Ah,
right?
I would say okay there. All right. And then 5. So are you considering da, 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 da. Yes.
Yeah, so again, then there's questions that we ask, like
No,
what
this is
will it
good.
look like to thrive in 6 months? So as you're waiting for Katrina to do the quiz, like you can even ask yourself right now, like what would it look like if in 6 months you could become a green zone human being? And
Mm.
I'm telling you something. That is possible after 3 months of working with this work. Like 6 months is like, oh great, I've got a good leeway. People really change 3 to 4 to 5 points doing this work. And it's not hard, right? Because I worked hard my whole life, right? I pushed and I thrived. And this work is actually not hard. It requires practice and consistency, but it's not like we're going to push you into transformation, is we're going to open you into transformation,
All
soften
right.
you into
So I
transformation.
know there's a couple questions here at the end. I'm going to kind of go through because I'm curious about the answer. Are we good with that? And I'll
Yeah,
come back
sure.
and get it again. Okay. I'm laughing because I can actually I'm going to do this so you know exactly where this came from, because if you're reading this at any point, you're going to understand that I'm doing this on the podcast. So I put in a note in there that I'm doing this in the podcast.
Okay.
All right. So everybody, hold on. We're going to do this because I'm just fascinated by this, Isabel. If I could spell my last name, it'd be great too. This is why you don't want long last names.
I know. Oh, long website, long emails.
And I have both. Uh, are you curious? Because I'm curious.
Yeah.
Okay. And I got it. I'm going to get on your email list. Let's do this.
All right.
Are you excited? So
I'm
you didn't think,
excited.
you
I've
had no
never had
idea that I
anybody
was
do it.
about to do this quiz right here, right now with you. I was like, oh no, we're taking this to the next level. We're gonna play this whole game right
And
now.
Katrina, guys, right? Those of you listening, she could be bullshitting us, right? And she could be saying, and I'm saying that, of course, I know she never would, but we can bullshit ourselves, is what I'm trying to say. So when you take the quiz, don't bullshit yourself, right? Don't lie to yourself. Like, really take this quiz from a place of honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Because, the whole point of this life audit is that you can't change anything if you don't know where you are, right? This work is about giving you a reference point of where you are on the scale so that then you know where you want to go. You can't know where you want to go if you don't know where you are.
Okay, so the points on here. Okay, so I got all the points. So am I clicking
You're
the link
supposed
in
to get
the
an
email?
email. You're going to get an email.
I got the email, like
Okay,
literally
so does
came
it
to me like
say,
that.
did it say what zone you're in? It says welcome. It has a whole thing.
So it says, thank you for taking the quiz, being willing to look into this awful. Before I share results, do I want to remind you of something? And then you kind of go through that. So it says, to begin with your overall results, I'm in what they call the green zone.
There you go. And so what does it say about the green zone? Read it.
Um, it says, learn what being in the green zone means for you. So there is a guide for me to, so click on that link. But
Yes.
I'm doing with you this, ladies and gentlemen, for the few guys that are listening, because I know you are.
I hope the
Okay.
link works. So make sure because I've been working a lot with businesses. So just double check. But really, I mean, maybe this is not something you need to.
This is perfect. So this is actually you're walking through the stress presentation, so kind of further detailed into what we're going into. But for this one, what I really loved around this is that, I can step into a higher potential. So like I'm at a good point, I'm in the green zone, right? But there's still work for me to do. So like what Isabel just gifted me isn't that I'm whole and complete at this point, right? It is basically says that I am someone that leads from my heart. I'm definitely family forward. I do take care of my body. I've spent a lot of time spiritually finding myself and reconnecting with that. And it took me, I'm 47 years old at the time of the recording of this podcast, in case you guys hear this years later. Um, it took me a long time to get here.
Mm.
Like, I would say if you had had me do this 3 years ago when I first started this business, I most likely would have been in the red zone because I was super high stress. I was super high everything. And it took that internal conversation of me diving in and asking myself, what's the difference between women in business and men in business? And really starting to tangibly define it, just as you have with like, how do you identify stress? How do you find that stop, that yellow, that green? And the work that you've done has given you that life and vitality, as does when you really, as women, start finding your purpose, you then become lit up and find your life purpose vitality inside of that.
And reminding people if they do find out their red zone, don't worry about it. This is just what your nervous system has learned, and the nervous system can be trained. So don't
Yep.
worry about it if you're not green zone. I want to make sure to tell people that.
Definitely don't worry about that. But I think it's interesting because you give me like the recap of where my points are in each one, how I got assessed. And it just kind of has me go back through, even for myself, validating again what points I gave to what. So even though I did this on the fly with you, there is a sense for me able to go back through and really sit with myself. So this is a really beautiful, and I do invite all my listeners to take advantage of it and go through that quiz. And then at the end of the day, Isabel, if they want to work with you, there's going to be a link in the show note. Also, you have invited them to have a session with you to really be in this conversation. So I thank you for that also. What does the session look like with you?
Well, ideally they take the quiz, somebody takes
Okay,
the quiz, and that gives me already so much information about
perfect.
where they're at. But people can reach out to me whether it's for a personal reason or a business reason. And for the business reason, it could be for themselves as leaders or, leaders of a company or an organization of a team, but also bring this work to organizations. It's had incredible success. So really, there's a lot of different ways, but for them, if it's for them, they will walk away understanding themselves better and with specific steps about what to do to start shifting those numbers to higher numbers. So I'm a very engaged, as you can imagine, coach.
Yeah. And I will say that this quiz is going to be an eye-opening conversation for many of you. Your questions are very well thought out. How they're worded is fantastic. So, ladies, take the quiz. It's like not just listening into what we're talking about here, but you're invited in to play in this conversation with us and play with Isabel inside of this. So, thank
Well,
you.
remember this. My formula is awareness plus action equals self-regulation. Sometimes I say transformation. So you ladies could be listening to this call. That's the awareness part. Oh, yeah. But if you don't take action, that very much slows transformation. I never thought about it like that. You can use that
Mhm.
formula even for this experience.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for this amazing conversation and being here on Did She Really Say That? Because, ladies, I promise you, there were times when you said, oh my gosh, did she really say that? And you had moments of awareness, moments of regulation, moments of just saying, wow, there are other women out there that have had similar experiences, stories, and the transformation and the ability to evolve is available for you too. So thank you, Isabel, for your time. I appreciate you and love having you here. Look forward to having you back here on the show as we continue
I'm
developing this
excited. We can talk
conversation.
about body image next time because that's something I'm very passionate about.
Oh, yes. All right. Well, thank you,
Uh,
everybody. We'll talk
have a
soon.
green zone day, everybody.